Welcome to Round the Girdle Earth, the podcast where Dartmouth stories come to life. I am your host, Yovany Jerez, class of 2003. And in each episode, we sit down with members of the Dartmouth alumni community to explore the moments, mentors, and the memories that shaped them from the green to the great unknown. Whether you graduated last year or decades ago, these conversations offer a window into the journey we have taken and the common threads that connect us all. So grab a coffee, take a walk, and let's dive in. Today, I have the pleasure of inviting and interviewing my friend, John Arroyo, who are known for several years. He actually went to Carnegie Mellon University as an undergrad and graduated in 1999. Then 5 years later, he went into Columbia University for his master's in electrical engineering. And if one master's wasn't enough, he decided to go for his second master at Dartmouth College. I think it was electro-acoustic music. So why don't you just jump right in, John, and tell us what that master's was all about?
Right. So jumping into Dartmouth, I was coming right off from Columbia. So I spent some years working in New York City, which was pretty amazing in and of itself. And then come from big bustling town to Hanover. Hanover is a very quiet, a very great place, but very different. And I went there to study electroacoustic music, which is a term not as popular as it was once was. When the program started, it was sort of the way to define electronic music. When you're talking about anything from in the 50s where they're splicing tape together to the first digital audio controller or converter, all of that sort of gets compounded back into how do you use electricity or some sort of electronic means to make music.
Gotcha. So that was the combination. Now, were you on the essence of the program? Was it mainly on campus, on the Thayer School, on the Tuck School? Like where was the location?
Part of Thayer, but we had our own building. So there's a little building called Hall Garden Hall, which is it's pretty close to the Hop, right around the corner. Spent a lot of the time there. A lot of the classes were there. Probably half of my classes were there, if not more. And that becomes your home base.
Did you get to live on campus, or were you commuting, or were you living?
I lived down the ways a bit. What was it called? Sachem Village. Sachem Village. So it was a lot of folks from Tuck and other grad schools are there, but also from the sciences. So I ended up staying there. Some of my peers were in other places around the city, but I ended up on campus, off housing.
Gotcha. So let's rewind a little bit. Give us a little bit of context of your family history and your journey to school, and then to Columbia, and then eventually to Dartmouth.
Right. So my background, I grew up in Texas. Texas is always interesting mix of different cultures. My mother also was born here, but her family was all from Mexico. So she grew up in San Antonio. My grandmother and grandfather came when they were very young, probably 19 or 20. And they grew up just, very much in the city. They grew up speaking Spanish. My mother also, it was always big for her to be bilingual and to really speak well in either language. And my great grandmother was actually a Spanish teacher in San Antonio. And so on my father's side, he came here when he was in his mid-teens by himself. So he came from Spain. He's from the northern Basque region of Spain, and his family background is Castilian, Portuguese, and Basque.
Wow. And then, so what's the core of your family? Mom, dad, yourself? How many siblings?
Oh, I think I'm the youngest of five. So there are two older brothers, two older sisters, and I'm still the baby, although I'm getting on in years.
and and was education a big thing in your family? Was it the expectation? Like,
Yeah, I think that's really from our mother. Education was important to my father as well, but it was really big to my mother. Like you were going to college. There was no there was no other option. And she never finished it herself. She took some classes here and there, and probably has equivalent of an associate's, but never finished. And it was always important for her that we all went.
so I never been to Carnegie Mellon. Where is it, and what type of
It's in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I'd say down the street from University of Pittsburgh. It's a great little area. Beautiful town. It's known for its steel industry. You know, that was sort of the big thing back in the day. But it's still pretty modern city today. Now, even when I went to school there, it was transforming, where it felt old at times, you know, certainly. But the last time I went to visit, I was just shocked. They have this giant new stadiums. It's very active. Big research centers and technology centers moving in.
So how do you go from San Antonio to learning about a school in Pittsburgh?
Right. You know, it's interesting. When I learned about the school in high school, I just was drawn to it. It had some interesting things going on. I applied to a few different schools and got into a number of places, but that was my top choice. I wanted to go somewhere where you could explore technology and the arts at the same time. You know, they had some very famous scientists and technologists that went there, but they also had some famous artists. Like Andy Warhol went there when he was younger. So they just had even like Ted Danson, some of these different Spock on Star Trek. You know, that they're known for movies. They're known for technology. There's not many places where they actually Dartmouth is actually comes to mind as being that diverse as well. But there weren't that many places in undergrad that I knew of at the time.
So you did your undergrad 4 years there, and then you went into work, and then you were like, okay, I got to get myself a master's, and then you landed on electrical engineering at Columbia. Why Columbia?
You know, I was in the city already. I was working at some interesting places in New York City. I was inspired by a friend of mine who went to undergrad with, and he was doing software in the city and eventually ended up at Columbia, and basically followed his path, where he turned me on to it. If you work there, not only if you find the right job, get paid well, you can get free tuition. So I ended up going there with that in mind. And as soon as I could, I applied there, got in, finished my degree, and bounced.
Got it. So was that a full time, or were you working?
It was full time. So that was the other amazing thing. I worked full time, decent wage, honestly. I was working in the industry. When I switched to academia, I didn't take a huge hit, but I had the flexibility to go and leave for an hour and a half, go to class, come back. It did take a little bit longer to finish my master's, but it was very flexible.
And then how does Dartmouth make it into your radar screen?
Yeah, that was an interesting journey as well. I was part of the speech and audio processing lab at Columbia, which my professor was always very interested in other disciplines. So they started doing these interdisciplinary explorations. So I got to meet, even before that, but especially during that, meet folks that were in the music department. One of the people that I met in taking music classes, but also in this group, used to be at Dartmouth. And that's where I think I first connected the dots there. But the more I learned about what was happening there and what not just at that period in time, but also in the past, it just seemed like an interesting place to spend a couple of years to learn.
So the history appealed to you. A friend introduced you to it. So here you are arriving to Hanover, New Hampshire. What are your first impressions? What are the words that come to mind?
It was different. It was in some ways a breath of fresh air coming from I was living in Manhattan at the time, so I was Lower East Side, downtown. Very dense, very graffiti, very different environment coming to this very pretty, picturesque world. The fall foliage was just happening, so all of a sudden it's like a postcard everywhere. So it was sort of culture shock, but it was a nice culture shock.
Nice. And so what would be like one word that you would use to describe Dartmouth or Hanover?
I'd say charming, you know, either charming or safe, and safe in a good way. It was, for instance, there was another grad student I knew who he was visiting another town and he forgot how safe Hanover was. He just crossed the street. He got hit by a car and he broke his arm.
Jeez.
Like he was just so oblivious because it's just so safe. I mean, so I think charming and safe are my two.
Yeah, I have very vivid memories of leaving my laptop in the middle of the green, going to my dorm, getting lunch, coming back, and there it was, right? No problem. My wallet, everything. I've always appreciated the bubble, you know, the safe bubble that is Dartmouth as a community.
It's like very respectful, even across the board.
So I know you mentioned that you spent a lot of time near the Hop. Was that you had another favorite place to study or to hang out with?
I definitely spent quite a number of events there at the Hop. For studying, Hall Garden Hall was big, Baker Hall. If I really needed some peace and quiet, I might go to, you know, one of the little hideaways in Baker.
Yeah, and also something about the storiness of Baker, right? All this like old school architecture, right? It just pulls your mind into a sense of like, yes, this is the place to study.
And one of the amazing spots too, and surprisingly, it was rarely that busy. If you go into the basement, there's a big mural. It's Orozco from was it a Mexican painter, and it's beautiful.
Oh yeah, the Orozco murals. I think there's only 3 of them like it in the United States, and this was I think it was the last one that Orozco painted on, and that's why Dartmouth has such a special place in Mexican American history here in the U.S. So how does your academic journey compare to your siblings?
You know, it's mixed. My brother, well, actually, both my brothers have masters. Technically, I'm not sure if one of them finished his master's, but we'll pretend he finished. And then my sister, she never went to grad school, but you know, did undergrad, and my other sister went to school but didn't quite finish.
So as an undergrad, I know I pulled a lot of all-nighters, at least like 10 all-nighters. As a master student, did you have to pull all-nighters as well or no?
Yes, and there were definitely interesting times where maybe it's not a full all-nighter, got 2-3 hours of sleep, but certainly some late nights. But finishing, we had to do a thesis, and my thesis ended up being sort of 2 or 3 theses kind of combined in one, because one of my advisors wanted to go this direction and one wanted to go this direction. I'm just trying to get it done at this point, at some point. And I ended up, writing 2 or 3 you know, even one of the sections, which was inconclusive, but to really make it conclusive, it probably had to be its own PhD. You know, so certainly plenty of late nights for that.
Were there any like peculiar traditions that stood for you as unique of Dartmouth, especially to compare with like the other institutions?
I mean, one in particular, the fire, which was just blew my mind when I saw it. They make all the freshmen just run around the big.
Oh, the bonfire!
Yes,
oh, yeah.
Yes. And we were standing on the sidelines. We're like, "Oh, we're grad students. We don't participate." But then I think some of the seniors were like, "No, you're first year. You got to go." So that was fun. It was different. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, I remember I saw a class of 2003, and we were debating, do we run 103 times or 3 times? And I was like, I'm running 3 times. Like,
Yeah.
this thing is hot. Like, I'm not running anymore. But it was, yeah, that's certainly one of the most memorable uh, just experiences overall. This bonfire that's like the height of 3 buildings,
And I
right, in
don't
the
know
middle of campus.
if they did it when you were there, but when Diwali comes around, they had it seemed like 1,000 lights just all over campus, and
Yeah.
it was really pretty. I didn't know about Diwali at the time, and was quite surprised when I came out.
So the bonfire was one of them. What was the second one?
Diwali, when they do the Diwali celebration on campus.
Okay, gotcha. That comes around all of it. How about in terms of like anything weird that you're like, oh,
I mean, lots of weird stuff. Certainly, just around. If you explore into Vermont and other parts of New Hampshire, the town. I don't know. Sometimes we'd call them townies, but
no, that's how you call them. Yeah.
Vibe, but they were very interesting to interact with. Just for instance, coming from New York, we there was one weekend like, oh, let's go to a club. There aren't really clubs around there. You had to drive. We found the closest thing to it, and it was not what I was expecting. Very different. But it was an experience, and we had fun regardless. It was.
I'm trying to. Yeah, I don't think I ever went to.
It was in New Hampshire, but it was at least 45 minutes away.
Yeah, I never went to a local New Hampshire club. I think when we wanted to do a road trip, it'd either be Boston, which was 2 hours away, or Montreal, Canada.
Oh,
Back
Montreal,
then, it was easier to just shoot up and come down, and we did that at least 3 times because the Canadian dollar back then was like, it was a good exchange rate. So as a poor student, my $100 will go like 3 times as much. So that was a good road trip.
That's good. Yeah, I only went once, but I wish we would have went more. Was to Montreal. We went and saw Bjork out there, and it's a really cool city.
Yeah. As you think about the classes you took, I'm assuming that the classes at a master levels are still small like they are for undergrad.
Yes, very small. And in some cases, for instance, our I forget what they call them, but essentially it's just for we call them the seminar. So it's just for people that are in the program. There's only 3 people per year. So at max in some of those classes, there's 6 people. So very small. Occasionally, one of the professors let a couple of his favorite undergrads in, but usually it was just the 6 of us, and it was always very interesting because you get to know what people are thinking.
Did you bump into any like memorable books or classes or quotes that stood out for you and were formative for you?
At that time, there were certainly some different things reading, and no particular quote stuck out at that time. I'd say later in life, definitely. What was interesting there, which I didn't even finish the book, one of the graduate seminars, my professor, for some reason, wanted us to read Origin of the Species. And this was a graduate music seminar, mind you. I read part of it. It's very interesting. There was too much going on in my head. I was like, I'm not going to read this whole book. So I had to pretend like I did because we're in a small class. And, but it was interesting that he thought it was relevant enough, at least enough to spark some conversations about how to approach things.
Do the graduate students get to interact at all with any of the undergrads?
Not all of them did. I did. I was lucky. I was the teaching assistant for the electronic music class. So I actually got to meet quite a number of undergrads, and a few of them actually kept in touch with. They were really cool. One of them is I think you know a couple of them too. I met them not just through that class, but also through doing some collaborative music stuff on campus.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, I think I interacted a lot more with the Tuckies and Thayer, because I was doing work study for a tuck, right? So
Oh,
I would pick up visitors from the airport, Lebanon airport, in the school van, and I will bring in back
oh,
into campus. So that's the reason why I interacted a lot more with the Tuckies and sometimes the Thayer School of Engineering. But yeah, I didn't know that Dartmouth had all these other masters beyond those two.
it was sort of quiet. I met other, folks in science masters only through friends and friends of friends, even because within Thayer, even there's not as many mixers as you would expect. I met a few Tuckies. I actually got to DJ one of the Tuck end of year parties, which was kind of interesting.
So if you had to do, so I've seen your professional journey, and you've done a lot of things from, well, right now you work for Citi, and you're the head of one of their operation technical teams, but it's like, it's not just that. You've done entrepreneurship, you do a lot of board advisory. Like, how do you, like, you jumped into many little ponds here and there in your professional journey. What's it? So if you had to do a TED Talk, right, 20-minute TED Talk as to the you claim subject matter expertise and passion on, what would that be?
For me, because there is diversity. There's some threads that tie it together. A lot of the threads tend to end up being different aspects of technology, even whether it's even official advisory or unofficial advisory. I still have entrepreneurs reach out to me and ask for feedback on their products. Sometimes it's a sales pitch, but there are times where I've spent many hours just because it was interesting, where they were talking about their product and you're sort of helping them work through what they want to accomplish. And I always find that fascinating. But in terms of a TED Talk, probably somewhere around transformation. How do you use technology to transform anything? Because it could be one aspect of your business. It could be a new business. It could be dealing with a bunch of tech debt that's built up over many decades. It's always a journey to try to figure out how do you get out of that.
Well, then that's giving me the idea for our next podcast. We could just probably speak in depth. I love tech as well. I do have a master's in science and technology in tech because you can't do sales or marketing anymore without understanding the tech stack. Technology has just been infused into operations, into what traditionally was known as soft skills, but you need to understand the tech stack in order to be, more productive and more efficient and all of that. So I'm sure you probably have a lot to say about that as well.
No, it's very interesting because, marketing is very much influenced by the technology. I remember when I was in Los Angeles, there was a blurring between a technologist and a marketing person in some companies because they are basically the same, the same thing.
Yeah. I'm curious about your definition of success. And has that evolved, from pre-undergrad to like postgraduate? Like,
I think it continues to change. There's aspects of it where even if you have some internal milestone or something that you want to accomplish, when you get into the realm, it doesn't really, at least for me, it didn't feel as momentous as I would have thought, 10, 20 years prior. But for me, I think it just continues to evolve. What does it really mean? Does it go into one area or another? Because it's not just all about how much did you monetize, right? It's not just about that, but it's really a combination. So I think it's evolving to be more complex, to be honest. Like, what does success really look like? And at the end of the day, what you just as a human or an individual have to hopefully be drawn by something that resonates and you feel you can bring to closure.
Yeah, I always say, like, sure, the financial part, check, but I'm married. I got 3 boys. That's what I try to be successful at every day.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
exactly. Having a family really changed the dynamic. I have twin daughters, and certainly that between them being born and just some of their life events, yeah, you start to rethink what does success look like.
Yeah, for sure. And since you had the opportunity to be part of 3 different institutions, I'm wondering if you've seen anything different in the alumni network of these 3 institutions.
Yes, it's actually very different, night and day. To Columbia's, they do have a very rich network. It's not as engaged. The unofficial side of the Carnegie Mellon network is very engaged. The official side is good too. It's solid, but it's nothing like the Dartmouth alumni. The Dartmouth alumni is a very rich network that I don't know that many schools have something like that.
Like what would be like an experience that drives that point for you?
I would say, here in Dallas, I haven't been as engaged in it, but certainly on the West Coast or on the East Coast, there's a lot of opportunity, like specialty groups, but also just alumni groups where people stay in touch. They use it a way to enrich themselves, not necessarily making more money, but to find others that either they never met before, that are somehow related. In some ways, and sometimes it's a way to reconnect back with some folks that still have ties back to the campus. But I've seen a lot more effort by alumni to help out, whether it's interviews or prospecting, and just any number of things you can do to help. I've even done, I didn't do it last year, but I've done a few years of alumni interviews, and I thought it was really rewarding. It was very impressive. Some of the students that were applying, I was just blown away, because thinking back to my 17, 18-year-old self, I was like, well, I sound like a loser next to some of these people.
Yeah, some of the kids that I've interviewed, I say kids, some of the young people that I've interviewed, they're started their own nonprofit. It has raised like thousands of dollars, did a startup already. And I was just looking at like, okay, in high school, I felt like I did a lot, but I certainly was not playing at that level.
Yes, yes.
So yeah, this next generation is certainly quite intimidating, but I think that's fantastic. I think that's the game gets better and better.
They're adapting to the times and trying new things.
Yeah, I've certainly found there's something unique about the Dartmouth spirit and the alumni network, right? Like it's like whether you were there for 4 years, 2 years, or even a 1-year program, like you walk away knowing that you belong to this community that expands the world. And whenever you use that card, hey, I'm a Dartmouth alumni, doors get open. You're welcome. You're warmly welcome. I think one of the most exciting encounters I've had is when I travel and I bump into like somebody wearing a Dartmouth cap or a Dartmouth shirt, right? And I'm like, hey, and then it's like instant magnetism, instant connection.
Yeah, it was in Los Angeles, I think it was Beverly Hills. I was just waiting in line, and I happened to have a Dartmouth t-shirt on, and some random stranger just started chatting with me. And people don't usually randomly chat with you in Beverly Hills. They're usually a little standoffish. And he's like, oh, I did you go there? Oh, my nephew went there, and blah, blah, blah. And he just kept going on and on. And then by the time I check out, he's like, oh, let me connect you on LinkedIn and this and that. If I had a Carnegie Mellon hat, I don't think that would have happened.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's good. That's good to know that you as a graduate student experienced the same thing that I experienced as an undergrad. As we wrap up this podcast, I'm curious as to what will you tell a younger version of yourself to optimize your undergraduate experience and your graduate experience, your academic journey? What will you tell that younger version of yourself?
And it's a good question. in terms of really optimizing the time there, the irony is I felt like I really did optimize it pretty well. Coming from New York, I was going a mile a minute, but there's more I could have done that first year, I think, to connect with the campus and some of the broader community. Because in the second year, I felt like I really did connect, where I was meeting people in Vermont, and I actually met like the DJ in Vermont, and we became friends for a while. And there's a rich campus. How do you really tap into it? First year, it was getting used to the new area and this and that, and probably could have done more, I think, to really connect and engage at least the first 6 months.
Yeah, I think it's a bubble, it's small, but it has so many options.
Yes.
Right? It's like yes, the choices sometimes are difficult because it's like, oh, I like that, but I like fencing, but I also like ultimate frisbee, but I also want to learn this. It's a lot of options. So that's in the past. How about in the future? As you think about your legacy as a man, as a human being, as an alumni, how are you thinking about your legacy?
For me, if I can get folks to try things, I think that is important to me. When they think about any sort of legacy or something that I was involved in, what might people get out of their comfort zone and just try? I think that was something I really liked about Dartmouth is regardless, undergrad, graduate, first year, last year, people had a tendency to try to make stuff happen. And I didn't, and part of it is I was probably in my own bubble, inside the bubble, but I didn't meet people who were just detached and didn't want to do things. Like they all wanted to make stuff happen.
Yeah, I agree. I saw that trend as an undergrad. I saw that trend with all the Tuckies I met in School of Engineering students, right? Like that was a common thread. Like people were living with the desire to be impactful, a desire to truly like not only make something themselves, but learn and turn that knowledge into something, right? It always reminds me of what my grandfather used to say, saber es bueno, crear es Dios. To know is good, but to do is God, right? Because the creator creates, right?
Like,
and
also like the similar to ideas are cheap, right? It's like everybody has them, right? Because they are like sometimes good ideas don't come easy, but it's really the next part that's the hard part.
That's right. That's right. Well, John, this is short, but I appreciate you taking the time with us to share a little bit about your story, your background, your journey, and staying with us with this introspective questions as well. I'll share your LinkedIn profile if folks wanted to connect with you. They could do and follow that up. And I want to thank everybody for joining us in this podcast around the Girdled Earth. If today's conversation sparked a memory or gave you something to think about, leave us a thoughtful reflection on the comment section. Please share the episode with a classmate or another fellow alum. Those are just small little ways to keep the Dartmouth spirit alive through this digital age. Until next time, keep sharing your story, stay curious, keep roaming this beautiful Girdled Earth. Thank you.
Thank you.